The challenges that I found in being a parent and a musician were also challenges that other musicians have been solving for hundreds of years, just like we solve how to conduct this particular crazy bar with 3 fermatas and weird entrances. Like, the solutions are out there, but you have to ask for them. You have to seek out the people and ask for help, and then you have to be willing to do the work.
Hey there, welcome to the Conductor's podcast. I'm your host, Chao Ting, a conductor with over 20 years of experience working with professional symphony orchestras, opera houses, new music groups, and vocalists. I'm also founder of Girls Who Conduct and have mentored hundreds of conductors from across the globe. I created the Conductor's podcast to share all the behind-the-scenes secrets with you while I interview conductors, musicians, and business gurus from around the world. This is a space created for conductors, conducting students, musicians, and non-musicians who are curious and interested in learning more about the profession, craft, industry, and business. Shy away from the real talk? No way. Money, hardship, growth, and the roller coaster of a conducting career are all topics we discuss here. I will give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you take action on your big dream, move through the fear that's holding you back, and have a real impact. Now, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. Hi there! Welcome to episode number 12 of the Conductor's Podcast. I'm your host, Chao Ting, and I'm thrilled that you're tuning in with me today. Merry Christmas if you're having a big celebration this week, and happy holidays to those who don't celebrate Christmas like myself, but are currently in this holiday season together. If you're none of the above, as holiday is something far from your current status, I wanted to wish you a great ending of the year. After all, 2021 was really something special, wasn't it? The pandemic has told us a lot of things. Many of us lost their loved ones, and some of us had a chance to reflect on their relationship with others. Being forced at home gave some people a chance to spend more time with their families, while some others couldn't see their loved ones for months because of COVID-related travel restrictions or other concerns. In today's episode, I will be exploring the topic of a family-centered career trajectory with my friend Kristin Roach. Kristin will share with us how she fostered her relationship with her family while creating projects around her home base, San Antonio, Texas. We will also discuss challenges in the career as a working and traveling parent and how you can make it work by owning your decisions and taking responsibilities resulted from your choices. Kristin is a Grammy-nominated pianist and international conductor with 37 new operas and 21 world premieres under her baton. Her high level of artistry, comprehensive knowledge of operatic repertoire and performance practices, and strong communication, management, motivational, and organizational skills place her in demand as a conductor, pianist, and vocal coach across the nation. She currently serves as assistant professor of opera at Lawrence University and conductor at Vocal Academy of Orvieto, and maintains a busy private practice as vocal coach and award-winning pianist with extensive collaboration. As founding music director of Alamo City Opera, Kristin conducted 17 productions of operas, including many South Texas premieres. A San Antonio native, she partnered with founder and general director, the late Mark Richter, to help ACO establish an atmosphere of intimate opera with diverse and groundbreaking programming, which drew hundreds of audience under the age of 35, and many of whom were first-time opera goers. Hey, welcome to the show, Kristin. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to the Conductor's Podcast, and I can't wait for you to share your story and experience with my audience.
Xiaowen, I'm so thankful for this invitation, and I look forward to talking with you. I've really enjoyed listening to the episodes that you've already released, and I'm so proud to be a guest here. Thank you so much.
No, the honor is mine. I'm so happy to have you here. So before we get started, though, will you please give everybody a brief intro?
Sure. So I started off as a pianist, and I'm still a pianist. I started off, my first accompanying job was actually playing for my mother while she conducted the little kids choir at our church. And I've always been a collaborative pianist. It's always my favorite thing to play, and someone else plays or sings beautifully alongside. I also loved playing in instrumental ensembles. I grew up playing the flute in the band, and also for as a professional for the last 25 years as a extra musician with the San Antonio Symphony and other orchestras. At the Eastman School, I got a Bachelor of Music in Piano and a Master of Music in both collaborative piano and piano performance. And I also got to study conducting with David Efron. And that's really where opera became a huge part of my life. Efron had been in Germany and then was at New York City Opera for years. And just hanging out at rehearsals and watching him conduct the opera, work with the singers, put that huge art form together really inspired me. And he was very kind to me as a student and also incredibly demanding. And he also gave me one of my first professional jobs then working at Brevard when he was the music director. So I learned from him also the importance of recognizing young talent, young conducting talent, and providing them a path to get started. After I finished at Eastman, I did a couple of years as a fellow in Aspen and also a summer with the Marilla program, and started working professionally in opera as a pianist. Karen Keltner was the longtime resident conductor of the San Diego Opera. She had been a guest conductor while I was at Eastman, and I played for her. She hired me for my first professional job at San Diego Opera. And then I spent the next several years traveling around working for other American opera companies. And while I loved that, and it's more of what I ended up doing later, I really wanted to develop a home base and make music in my hometown. And it turned out that I moved back to San Antonio, where I was from. And I also wanted to have children, and I wanted to have them right away. I didn't want to be in my 40s and have young children. So at 27, my oldest Carl was born, and 4 years later, Kyle was born. While I was traveling around for opera, what I realized was that certain members of an opera cast can and do travel with their families. And for example, if a singer is not on stage for the bit that we're rehearsing at that moment, they don't come to rehearsal and they're free to explore their new city with their family, or they can arrange for a sitter to be with their child in their dressing room during a performance. But for the pianist and for the conductor and for the stage director and the stage manager, we're in rehearsal all the time. There is no rehearsal that happens without a pianist. And so I realized that traveling, particularly when my children were little, was going to be very difficult. Now, it is possible. So anybody out there who wants to be a pianist or a conductor in opera and bring their children with them, by all means do. But I didn't want to do that. So I made a home base in San Antonio. I did a lot of chamber music and accompanying as a pianist. In the meantime, I recognized the need to develop the operatic presence in my hometown. And so I worked with the San Antonio Opera on the largest pieces of the standard repertoire. And that was either as a pianist, later as the chorus master and assistant conductor. But I wasn't hired to be the conductor. And I really wanted to conduct the operas. So I got together with my now late colleague, Mark Richter, and we founded Alamo City Opera, which was a smaller opera company that was operating alongside the larger company. Alongside that, I also found myself teaching quite a lot, both privately, private coaching of opera singers, and also at the university level. I taught for 10 years at the University of Texas at San Antonio, for 11 years at Texas State University in San Marcos, and most of that was teaching undergraduate level opera repertoire, putting together opera scenes and opera productions, either as the coach pianist or occasionally as the conductor. The pandemic hit and my position was eliminated at Texas State. I was fortunate to join the faculty at Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is where I'm talking to you now.
So I just want to jump in for the audience member who are not familiar with the form of opera or particularly opera productions. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about how, say, you were coaching a singer from beginning to the end for an opera production? What's that like?
Sure. Well, opera is a giant team sport. If you look at any team sport, what you see is a whole coaching staff. And the same is true in any theatrical production. From start to finish of any opera production, the team begins with the vocal coach and then the singer's private teacher. And those people work with the singer on learning their role. And the voice teacher works on how to sing the music. And then the vocal coach will work on the musical style, on putting the vocal line together with the accompaniment, also how that particular character's music interfaces with all the other characters. The next step is what we call the first day of school, where everyone in a production comes together and sings through the music for the first time. And in that scenario, there will be someone at the keyboard. There will be someone waving their arms in some fashion to lead the music. And if there is a chorus or a larger musical ensemble involved, there will be someone who has put that group together. Each of those people could also, or each of those duties, I should say, could be taken by multiple people. If you're in an opera company that's doing more than one show at a time, potentially different music staff could be assigned to different projects, but in different roles. You might need multiple pianists on a show if the principal artists are working in one room, the chorus is staging in another room, and the cover singers are rehearsing in yet a third room. So larger opera houses in this country would be like the Met, Chicago, Houston, LA, places where they're doing more than one show at a time. They will also have multiple pianists, multiple assistant conductors.
So, as you described, there are just so many parts of this giant production team of people. When you have an opera gig, you are very often traveling away from home for, we talked about that recently, from 3 weeks to 3 months. And when you said that, I understand you are a fellow mom with children, and I have my kids at a similar age. So I had my first one when I was 29, and for
Mhm.
3 years later, I had my second one. So I was a mom throughout my career. In a sense, I'm always a mom. I'm
Yes.
always looking out for my child, for my family, and to be protective of my time, because that is something very important for me. And can you share maybe a little bit about if you had other decisions in your career that were largely impacted by your family or by the fact of being a parent?
One of the decisions that I made was I did not want to travel when my children were little. And I own that choice and I talk about it a lot. What it has given me is now an empathy for people who do choose to travel and the difficulties that they face, whether that's how do I actually physically care for my children when I am not the one caring for them. The other decisions that were really vital were to separate my work area from my home area as much as possible. So in my home in Texas, I had an entire room where the music happened. It was my studio. And of course, my kids were welcome to be in there when I wasn't working, but it was very clear this is the music area. Anybody who doesn't want to work in your home, I highly recommend then renting a studio somewhere where you go to teach, work, record, practice, whatever it is. Because what you don't want is the feeling like you either never leave work because you're at home and you're working, or the feeling that you never can go to work because you're always tripping over toys and diapers and all of those accoutrements of the little ones. And if it's a dedicated area, it's easy to keep that area home free and then to keep the work from bleeding out into your home. So I think those are my pieces of advice.
I think a lot of people all experience the last part of your advice this past year through a pandemic because we were kind of forced
Yeah.
to go back home, and you suddenly are stumbled, as you said, over toys and unfolded laundries, diapers
Mhm.
and everything that suddenly your professional life and your personal life mingled, and there is no boundaries at all. Yeah,
Yes.
and then I have certainly seen other musicians taking their kids to rehearsals. I've seen a lot of them just like been in the concert hall doing homework, and I've heard of other conducting colleagues. They would either homeschool their kids, so or hire a full-time nanny, so the family can travel when they need to travel, which was not the case that you chose.
Yes, although I will say, like work is work and rehearsals they happen when they are scheduled, and that may or may not be when your kids are involved in anything else. So the need for childcare and the need for decisions about their education, like those are universal. My kids went to a lot of rehearsals, and when they were really little, a lot of the work that I did was with instrumental and choral ensembles, and particularly in schools. And it was very convenient for me because if I was going to a high school, say, the one of the choir officers could play with my son in the director's office during the hours that I was there, or one of the choir parents could come in. I made friends with a lot of choir moms when my kids were little, and they were thrilled because they had high school kids and they remembered when their kids were little, and they got to kind of vicariously revisit little kids before they were at the age, say, to be grandparents. And so there was a lot of pluses in all of that. The benefit then to being local while your children are growing up is then you also get to meet all the parents' friends, and you get to have them over. And so again, that's the life I wanted to create for myself, and I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. Now my kids are now 22 and 18, and they're off on their own lives. And so that part of my life, that door has closed in a certain sense in terms of having kids living at home. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that when they were at the age to be on my lap every night to read a bedtime story. I'm very glad I got to do that.
It's certainly a personal choice, as you said, and you really have to make the choice for yourself and to really own it. And it doesn't mean that you can't change your mind because things happen. And as life and career goes on, sometimes circumstances change. Like you might get invitation to conduct somewhere that is further away, but then you have to work out things, just like all the working parents, really honestly.
Yes.
So I had a question about the mentality of parenthood. My teacher, Neil Veron at Eastman, taught us that he felt he was a much better teacher and also a much better conductor after he had kids, much later in his life,
Oh, wow.
because he learned how to teach, how to be sympathetic, how to talk with people, and also be a little more patient and graceful when people are making mistakes, for example. Did you feel the same?
Absolutely. I think what I have learned being a parent is certainly the things that you say. The patience thing, oh my gravy. I often say that there's a reason that God makes children cute, because otherwise their parents would eat them. They just touch every single one of your nerves.
I totally agree.
And that does not change. It doesn't matter how old they are, but also there have been times when I have just had the worst possible day for whatever reason in Musicland. My kids have done something that's made me laugh or that's just reminded me that there's more to life than music. My younger son in particular was very affectionate. I mean, even now he's, 6'3" and he's like, "Hi, mom." But, there's just something that reminds you that life is not all about music. I also am grateful that because of meeting other families through my children, through their schooling or their extracurricular activities, I have met people I would never meet in the professional world or even in my own social circles. I tend to hang out with people who like the same things I do. That's what we do with our friends. But I have become very close to people I never would have just because of my children. And I think that's given me a wider appreciation for I guess the wider world would be the phrase I would use. My own friend base is so much more diverse because of the people I met through my children. And I also think that my kids reminded me of what I had to learn because I saw them have things that came easy to them and then also have things that were incredibly difficult. And so sitting with them and just helping them learn how to learn. I would agree then with Neil Verone about that it makes you a better teacher because like you do have to learn. How do you explain to a kid who's very, very physical how to sit still? How do you explain to a kid who is very loud and very emotional that you have to choose the volume of your voice and people will listen to you differently if you speak at different volumes? And, these are things that you're teaching not once. You're teaching that over the course of their entire time that they're with you. Now, in my own teaching, my current students are the same age as my children. So for this very, very brief window, I also know all of their pop culture references. So as a teacher, I have this really like maybe 2 or 3 more years where I'm going to appear cool as a college teacher. And because all the stuff that my students grew up with, I grew up with my own children. That window's going to close and I'm going to be the dork again very quickly, but I'll take it for as long as it will last. And then I think also
I was just thinking about that myself because I don't know if I had a choice again if I would choose to have kids or choosing to have kids at that age because I had my first one at the end of my master's degree and my second one at the end of my doctorate. So I each time I got a degree and a kid and then I'm done with school and kids.
Okay, well, chapeau, my friend, because I was long done with school when my children came, and I ended my schooling after the master's mostly because at that time what I really wanted was a DMA in opera conducting, and that didn't exist then. It does now, and I think I probably would have done that if it had been available.
Well,
But
I had to
anyway.
do a DMA because I was on student visa. I was an international student. So I needed to
Aha.
stay on a program before I got my green card. But I love that we are now taking kids to rehearsals. Like my kids have been going to rehearsals, and it was important for my kids to understand why mom is always away and I'm not away for fun, that I'm actually doing this kind of work and they can be a part of it. But I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
like, through the almost like 20 years really for you being a parent in the professional field, did you feel the atmosphere changed in the profession? And were you
Yes.
able to talk about being a parent at the very beginning? Because I didn't feel safe when I was very beginning in my career. I felt I would be judged if I say I have very little kids, that they might look down on me or it didn't take me as serious.
I think There's a couple of different answers to your questions. When I was pregnant with my oldest, I was still on the road as an opera pianist. I had two basic responses when people either saw that I was pregnant or in the earlier stages when I shared that I was pregnant. The first one was, "Oh, you're going to have such an awesome time, and like there's nothing like parenthood." Or the other one was similar to what you just said, which was like, "Oh my gosh, how are you going to do it? Or you're going to face all these obstacles." I will say the career itself and the people in the career presented me zero obstacles that I could not solve. I don't think I faced any obstacles that were any different to any other woman trying to work. Now, 22 years ago, there was a little bit more stigma than there is now against women working. And certainly in the last like 4 or 5 years, including podcasts like
Yeah.
this that you're starting, we've seen a lot of people really working hard to level the playing field for women in our particular profession. But like when I was having kids, I was not calling myself a conductor. I was really thinking of myself as a freelance musician, willing to do basically whatever it took. The challenges that I found in being a parent and a musician were also challenges that other musicians have been solving for hundreds of years, just like we solve how to conduct this particular crazy bar with three fermatas and weird entrances. Like the solutions are out there, but you have to ask for them. You have to seek out the people and ask for help. And then you have to be willing to do the work. You and I, before the podcast, were talking about how do you care for your family while you're away for many weeks at a time, and it's not just your children. In some ways the children are easiest to care for because they have school, they have very specific nutritional needs, they have needs to be supervised, and there's a lot of people who can help you supervise your children, and they will have that wonderful experience. Those demands are shared by all of us who are in the musical field. And so the answers of how to do that, how to find the balance in your life, how to create the kind of home life that you want, it's out there. You just have to keep asking. And so when I was really young, one of the things that I would ask people is like, "So tell me about your kids." And a really open-ended question like that, they would often then sneak in there little bits of their frustrations or their solutions. And so I learned a lot really early on just from asking my older colleagues in the symphony, or when I was traveling, just asking people like, "Oh, tell me about your children. Tell me about your family. How long have you lived here in Tulsa, San Diego, San Francisco, whatever city I was in?" And then they would tell me about what made things work for them, and it was very helpful.
I know, and how should I put this? I was just thinking because a lot of our problems and challenges, maybe a better word, as you described, are commonly shared by parents, working parents around the world for hundreds of years. But the perception is
Yes.
different. I do have a personal question. I'm curious, your mom or a parent friend, are they separated from your professional friends? Or do you promote your professional engagement since you're local and you're growing the art scenes in San Antonio? Do you share with your mom friends and, like you say, people who you might not even get to know if you were not a parent?
Yes, I did. I will say that most of my quote unquote parent friends are not musicians. And so I didn't have that opportunity of, having other musicians who had either children my same age, or that I just felt like we were friendly enough to share our troubles. When I was a pianist, though, everyone came and talked to me, particularly in the opera rehearsal room. In a certain sense, as the pianist, you're a sitting duck. They know where you are and you're not going to move because you got to play. But they would come and they'd hang their elbow over the piano and they'd talk about everything. And I often found out sensitive information that way, which could be advantageous or could be really uncomfortable. It can be an incredibly difficult emotional load to carry if people are kind of considering the pianist the dumping ground. But as I transitioned into different rungs of that music staff ladder, as the chorus master and then as the conductor, I found that people talked about their personal stuff to me less. And I think that was just a function of the leadership role. Or they were worried, for example, singers were worried that I might not cast them if they had issues with their children or with their spouse or with their university job. And I found that difficult at first, particularly when I was actively trying to leave the piano bench and move towards the podium. I found that very hard, and I don't want to say I lost friends, but I think I lost certain levels of friendships with people who didn't feel comfortable sharing their lives with me in the way that they had when they perceived that we were more or less on the same rung of the musical ladder. So that is something that as a conductor we have to contend with.
Thank you so much. But I also heard a few conducting colleagues or mentors that it's so important for them to keep that boundary between their musicians. They don't want to know their personal problems, not because they don't like working with them, but once they bound too closely or become too intimate over other musicians, then there's some tension in workspace. And I certainly felt that.
I think in a larger ensemble, that's definitely true, and certainly in a hierarchical ensemble like an orchestra or an opera cast, I think that can be tricky. I also think it's important to realize that these are potentially people you're going to be working with for years. And in the opera world, you hope that you're going to work with the same singers time after time after time because then you get to know each other, and you're going to want to form the types of relationships also where you are recommending them for things and they you. When I was hiring orchestras, I wanted certain people in certain posts because of my respect for them. But I also, I living in the same town for almost 50 years, I did get to know them as people. And so I think it's both and. I think you have to find the level that works for you. And as a freelancer, I also was not always in a leadership role. So I tended to be always conducting my friends and close colleagues. That's unusual, I will say. But it's also one of the bonuses of being based in a particular community for a long time is you do get to know people.
I'm glad to see that has worked well for you. So just before we wrap up, I had just one last question. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience or things that you would have done differently if you were doing it again, like different choice or the best advice you were given?
I think the best advice I was ever given was actually came from my teacher at Eastman, Dr. Jean Barr, who just retired after running the collaborative piano program there for decades. And she said to me, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And just because you should doesn't mean you can't or can. And there's another version of this, which actually comes from the inventor Henry Ford, who said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And so that goes to the idea of really setting your mindset and setting up your thought processes to support where you are and where you want to be. And I have certainly found that when my mental health and when my frame of mind are positive and clear and focused, that's when my life works the best. When I let my thoughts get cloudy and distracted, or if I'm not actively inspiring my mind and my soul, when I let myself get too busy or distracted or let things upset me that I need to let go of, or whatever version of that happens, then my creativity slows down as well. So just keeping my mind and soul clean and fresh and healthy and vibrant, that is my number one duty now. And then everything else that happens is fantastic.
That is wonderful. And I will share everything in the show notes, but I wanted the listener to hear it from you. So can you tell everybody where they can find you and if you accept friend requests on social media, all that?
On social media, I don't accept friend requests from people I haven't actually met, but you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Kristin Conducts. I also do a Tolkien podcast where I am the newbie on the show. And so that's at
Wow.
podmoot.com. You can follow my conducting adventures at kristinroach.com and my college work at lawrence.edu. I'm also going to send you, Chawin, a couple of pictures of my children in rehearsal settings and the funny antics they got up to. So one of them is my younger son, Kyle, doing push-ups on the clothing bar that was in my dressing room where I was supposed to hang I had 3 different jackets I had to wear. And so, but he was doing push-ups while he was waiting for the show to start. And there's another one of him asleep on one of the kneeling rails at the church. And another one of my youngest who attended a performance of Hansel and Gretel at age 3 months, dressed as a pumpkin in the arms of my colleague dressed as the witch. So those are perfect examples of just toting your kids along to the things that you're doing.
I would love to see that pictures. And there was a thread in Maestra Mom. There's a Facebook group for the theater
Yes.
moms. Did you see that? So they were asking for pictures of your kids at your work. They wanted to do a
Oh,
feature
I need
of.
to find that.
You
I
need to
need to
find it.
add
I'll
those.
tag you on that. So there were so many, so many fun pictures. But
Yep.
thank you so
Yep.
much again for coming to the show, and it was such a great chat.
Thank you, Chowin. All the best to you.
So here you have it, and I hope that you feel encouraged and perhaps reassured if you're ever wondering about finding a way to navigate the path of professional growth and parenting responsibilities. I personally hate the word balance, and I don't believe that there is a balance at all between your personal and professional lives. We only have so much time and energy to spend on things and people that we care and love, and the truth is, when you give to one, you don't give to another. Marian Alsop told us that guilt is absolutely useless and pointless at the Dallas Opera Heart Institute for Women Conductors when she came and teach the class. I totally agree with her that there are ways to make things work, and really owning your decisions and be fully present whenever you are at work and when you are spending time with your partner, family, or even pets is the most important thing. So, how do you manage your relationship with your loved ones while maintaining a career as a musician and a conductor? I'd love to hear your story with the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can DM me on social media. I am at Chao-Wen-Ting Conductor on Facebook or at TINGCHAOWEN, that is Ting Chao-Wen on Instagram. If you post something, don't forget to use the hashtag #TheConductorsPodcast. Or if you like, you can also email me at theconductorspodcast@gmail.com. Just one word, theconductorspodcast@gmail.com. Again, don't forget that I'm hosting a monthly giveaway of an hour of free consultation with me starting in December. All you have to do is to leave a review of the podcast on why you love the show, share the screenshot of the review, and tag me on social media. And you will be entered into the monthly giveaway for a free hour consultation. During the time with me, you will have a chance to ask any questions you might have about conducting or the business. You can also get an extra entry every month as long as you share the podcast post and tag any friend. So go ahead and subscribe and leave a review if you have been enjoying listening. Okay, I will see you next week at the same time, same place for the last episode of the year. Take good care and bye for now.